Okay. Good afternoon and welcome back. Currently, the Minister of Finance and Minister of Justice are here, and they will be answering the questions raised by members of Parliament regarding those two subjects. Now, I give the floor to the Minister of Finance, Mr. Art Valerian, to answer the questions posed by members of Parliament. Mr. Finance, you have the floor.
Good afternoon to the members of Parliament. Seeing that some of the answers from the other ministers were very short, they had one or two questions, we've decided to, Finance has decided to answer those to expedite the process. We don't have any answers currently from TIAT and actually ECYS, but I happen to know this answer for ECYS from my perspective at least, so I could answer that as much as possible. So regarding the question, I believe, by MP Melissa Gums, regarding the turf at Raoul Village and the track, and MP asked a question regarding the facilities, the repairs of the other parts of the facilities. So I knew that fell actually under the trust fund repairs. So that's the bleachers and I believe one more other item. And they were also looking at the cost of the track might be a little bit more than budgeted, and we're looking to take a portion of that money to also deal with a septic situation on the left bleachers. So regarding the laptop screens and desktops, I know this is also a proposal you had early in the year already. So we already have this process already in place. So when we looked also, I also looked and queried. When we looked in the region, we didn't see it happen that much. We know in bigger countries like the US that does happen more often because also of economic scale, but also having the companies, Dell and the others being in that country. So no, in this case, it wouldn't apply to us. And the next question, MP Heliga Martin had a question regarding the total debt of 1.85 million guilders, 44% of GDP. What is the projections for the figure for the coming years? Representative threshold of a public debt to GDP ratio of 60% is used to indicate the high debt levels. This benchmark is used by the IMF as one of its indicators to assess debt burdens in emerging markets. The government also uses the same standard as the IMF. According to the 2023 elucidation, the anticipated debt to GDP ratio is 30.3%, which is considerably below the 60% threshold. Despite expectations of a rise in debt, primarily due to loans for capital investment, we project a modest increase in debt to GDP ratio. This is because we are anticipating GDP growth in the coming years. Detailed multi-annual GDP figures can be found on page 3 of the elucidation book. Projections for 2024 through 2026 indicate a debt to GDP ratio ranging between 30 and 33% for St. Martin. Concerning adherence to the RFT, it's important to note that the RFT does not apply to a debt to GDP ratio, but instead employs the interest burden norm. And lastly, with regard to the tax reform improvement process, on November 9th, 2023, the Tax Improvements Working Group and the third party that is responsible for drafting the relevant legislation concepts met to discuss the proposed tax improvement in more detail. This third party is currently engaged in drafting this concept. The goal is to finalize these legislative concepts by March 2024. Then we move on to questions posed by, I believe, MP Rayon Peterson for Vromi. The answer is, for an area in Kupkoi with a water lease question. Yes. Recently, a meeting was held with all the notaries for us to find out the best way forward while taking the DDM arrest case into consideration. The situation of the DDM has the attention of the ministry as this affects many, many stakeholders. Given the complexity of the situation, we are actively considering all relevant factors. We understand the significance of this matter and assure all concerned that a thoughtful and comprehensive approach is being taken to address all aspects of this issue. And that'll be all the questions posed to the Ministry of Finance and answers. Ministry of ECYS and the Ministry of RUMI. So as I mentioned before, we haven't gotten any update from TIAT, so they'll have to come and answer for themselves. And now, I guess I give the floor on to the Ministry of Justice. Oh yes, we had a question also from MP De Weaver regarding the COLA payment. As I previously mentioned last week, I believe in the CC, that at that point in time, the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of AZET, myself and the Honorable Prime Minister Sylvia Jacobs were in discussions, and also we had a task force team actually put together, a negotiating team put together that that was negotiating items with the unions, and one of those items was the COLA and indexation, among others. And as I mentioned last week, we did come to an understanding, and then they had to go and meet with their membership, and this has now concluded. So they have met with their membership. We have a covenant agreement, and we have a covenant agreement, and we have indicated that we will be doing a joint press release very, very short. So in respect of the unions, and which they also asked us to respect that position, that we do it jointly. So we put a note of, in short, a press release regarding the covenant and all the agreements that we have within this covenant. But yes, one of those is the COLA and the indexation. You ask a question. And then we have one question from MP Bryson regarding GB. GB does not pay concessions. As stated previously, the concession receivable from GB is netted with the amount payable to GB by government for electricity and water, which is owed to them. So, that'll be all, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Minister of Finance. Now I look at Minister of Justice, if she's ready with her answers. Minister, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A pleasant good afternoon to you, to all members of Parliament and everyone who's tuned in. So jumping right into the answers of the questions posed, I begin with MP Gums, question 1. How far is the ministry in the process of drafting the LBAs for the justice workers? Where are you in this process? We are currently in the midst of the process, and I can state that we have nearly 200 national decrees that are prepared and ready for the next step. The next step being, of course, with the approval of this budget amendment. The governor has the package already in his possession. Once we have received same back, the Minister of Justice has to co-sign with the governor, and the LBAs can then be sent. LBAs meaning the individual LBAs. Question 2, will there be in the period provided to personnel for their owed amounts? Will there be in the period provided to personnel for their owed amounts, will they be able to view their calculations? Certainly. This ongoing process is evolving, and each individual employee's ratified national decree will undergo reconciliation in collaboration with the Ministry of Finance. This will be provided to each employee with clear insight into their final calculations. I move on to questions from MP Emmanuel. How does the payments goes for the employees that are not a union member? The agreement reached on the CCSU platform regarding the payment disbursement plan applies to all relevant employees, whether active or inactive. It is essential to emphasize that this platform is legislatively established, meaning the CCSU is legislatively established to represent all civil servants. So it doesn't matter whether you're a member of the union or not, the CCSU's legislative establishment represents all civil servants. Moreover, I want to underscore that I took the executive decision to ensure that all unions, whether they were members of the CCSU or not, to be a part of this process. Question 2, when will the total amount owed to be known to the individual employee? The final amount owed to an employee is conclusively determined by their individual ratified decree. It is important to note that each employee's situation is unique and evolves as the days progress. The recalculated final reconciled amount owed per employee is based on their national decree. So with the preparations of, and I want to reiterate, I have made it possible through the open door policy at our Illich Road office. Employees are always welcome to visit the office and can get the information. As a matter of fact, this happens daily. Employees are visiting that department on a day-to-day basis to be able to get information about their personal matter. The agreement made with the unions, does this apply to non-union members? Yes, the agreement made on this platform of the CCSU applies to all eligible employees, being all employees within the Justice Ministry. Who's exactly covered under the 44 million? An estimated 760 plus employees are included with the scope of the calculations. Does the 750,000 that included by the police also include what is owed them with retroactive totally? The 2023 budget specifically considers the impact of phase 1 of the placement process involving the placement of active personnel as of January 1, 2023. This adequately addresses the required budgetary implications of this phase, ensuring alignment with the 2023 expenses. Question 6. The presentation that was received, was this discussed with the unions? The information presented in this overview that I gave today has undergone discussions across multiple platforms, including the CCSU, encompassing of all union representatives, whether they were or are a part of the union or not, the Council of Advice, the Council of Ministers, which includes His Excellency the Governor, and most importantly, the employees through town hall meetings and regular updates via the intranet. Consistent communication has been a vital aspect of this ongoing process. The decisions to present the information in this format is in response to the frequently asked questions, ensuring clarity and understanding. So nothing presented here is unfamiliar to anyone, including the unions. The 2023 budget had approved 2.5 million and now addition of 750 increase. Why was the 2.5 million not used as it is? I'm sorry, these questions are from MP Westcott, just for clarity, yeah? As it is portrayed that this addition is needed for the justice payment. In 2022, December, the legislative package was sent to the governor. The governor returned the package and indicated that the holistic, in total, debt, retroactive, going forward, the total sum must be identified. The reason that we had sent it in December of 2022 is because we believed that because the reservations was already in the approved budget, it would have sufficed. However, the governor made reference to article in the Rijkswet, or the Kingdom Law, that there is a requirement to have the full financial implications. This is something that I have been given updates on throughout this entire process, why we were not successful in December 2022 to have the LBHUM signed, the LB signed for the enactment of the function book, as well as the new salary scales. To ensure that the legislative package can be signed expeditiously, we have since gone through the process of doing the entire calculation. This is where that 44 million is realized. The calculations is done, the entire package is met and has been provided to His Excellency. Today we stand before you here as Parliament seeking for this budget amendment to be approved, because the budget, being the 2023 amendment, as well as the multi-annual budget, has now been prepared and updated to give the governor the comfort that he sought to ensure he is signing in alignment with the Kingdom Law. What is the budget in the 2024? What is budgeted in the 2024 budget for the justice workers regarding retroactive payment? 5.1 million is taken up in the draft budget of the Ministry of Justice in relation to retroactive payments. When will the justice workers get their 2023 payment? The process follows a legislative path. Initially, the budget amendment for 2023 needs to be approved here by Parliament, incorporating the necessary adjustments related to the debt tally. Subsequently, the governor must sign the legislative package following the passage of this amendment 2023 budget. The sequential phase involves the immediate progression of individual national decrees or LBs, commencing with the ongoing placement process, beginning with phase 1 as outlined in the presentation earlier. This is succeeded by the implementation of actionable payments originating from the individual LBs, specifically those in an irrevocable state, free from objection or appeals. As previously mentioned, the ministry is dedicated to expeditiously managing these proceedings. Question 4 from MP Westcott Williams. Process of objections, how is it going? When will they get their LBs? The process of objections is ongoing, and there are at least 120 objections received. Half have been responded to according to our representation that is handling those. Each person's situation is uniquely different, and we have emphasized that the objection and appeal process is not to impact the persons with no objections or appeals. So despite having these objections, we remain steadfast in handling of all individuals to which this pertains. I'm moving on to questions from MP Bryson. What is the process of communication regarding the LB issuance and the possibility for review and feedback on their LBs? Is it a letter? Will it be an email? Meetings? Can the minister give clarity on how this will go? So when it comes to communication with the staff, as I mentioned, intranet, the open door policy, we continue to provide updates to staff, and we continue to welcome staff to visit us at the HR department to be able to express any type of grievances that they may have. We have, like I said, received letters of objection from staff, and those letters are being responded to. For a person born on the French side of St. Martin living on the Dutch side, can they apply for a driver's license on the Dutch side? The answer is, if the person is registered on the Dutch side, they can apply for a driver's license. That means if someone also has conditional residency, yes, they can apply for a driver's license. I move on to questions from MP Heiliger Martin. Regarding the seniors that are eligible to be paid in installments, can we receive an overview or a listing for the amount and their age brackets? At this time, we can advise you, MP, that there are about 100 employees that are within this category. However, we cannot provide you with the specifics at this time. What does the Ministry of Justice mean if the economic situation improves? Does that mean faster disbursement? We have prepared a sound multi-annual budgeting spread to amount for our fiscal reality today. However, this current reality can improve over the upcoming years. Under improved conditions, this disbursement plan can be adjusted, just like a budget amendment at this time. What is important is for me as the current Minister of Justice is to prepare a sound plan that can be consistently maintained. And let me just add, as a ministry, we are doing financial overview of what we charge for, what we don't charge for. We have a lot of services that we render that we are not charging for. We're busy with the Ministry of Finance to be able to see how the leases could be updated to be able to generate more income. There are other services that we are providing. Our expeditious and continuous approach is to be able to generate more income for the island. I have spoken about our compliancy levels. We want to be able to see that our inhabitants are complying with the various laws that we have and contributing where they need to, because we need to be able to afford our debts. So we as a government, we continue to look at ways that we can increase income to be able to afford what we must pay. Question 3, has everyone received placement letters? And in reality, how many of those does not have objections? How many of the 760 has objected what they received? I mentioned earlier there's about 120 or so objections received. It is important to note that 760 employees are included, both active and inactive personnel within the Ministry of Justice. Only active personnel would have received a placement letter, as they are still in active service to be placed. The amount of eligible active personnel as of January 1, 2023 is approximately 550 employees. There are persons who have been reissued updates and or corrections to their letters. There's approximately 10 to 15 persons who are active personnel but are still pending to receive their letters, and that is because their situation is peculiar, whether they have moved between departments over the years and their entire trajectory in their service line has to be calculated, whether they were subjected to overtime due to their movements. All of this has to be done with them, and it is estimated to be handled before the finalization of this process, of course. The process of objections is ongoing. As I mentioned earlier, there's about 120 that is being dealt with. And that brings me to the final question that I received thus far. I'm available for any additionals. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Minister, does any member have any point of clarification? Yes, MP comes. Point of clarification? Yeah.
Sorry, point of order. Just to be clear, we can clarify now, even though TEAT has not come back with their answers, so that doesn't interrupt the round 1 situation. Okay.
I think so. Let me adjourn for 2 minutes. Meeting adjourned. Welcome back. And now we have Minister of Finance to answer the questions for Minister of TIAT. Minister of Finance, you have the floor.
Yes, I'll move on to the questions posed by MP Helga Martin. Question regarding persons, companies, buses, taxi licenses, names, buses, numbers, and so forth. TIAT mentioned or commented the list will be compiled and submitted in writing.
When? No. Point of order, Mr. Chairman. I want that answer now. It's the OV.
Yeah.
OV. I want it now. Yes, no.
Mr. Chair, should I continue or you gonna adjourn?
Let me adjourn the meeting for 5 more minutes.
You can answer for other people, man.
Welcome back. And I have Minister of Finance to answer the questions posed by members of Parliament for Minister of TIAT. Minister of Finance, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As the MP requested, the list has been sent in a confidential manner, has been booked in. And I've also indicated what was said during the break. MP requested to have a separation of the old and the recent. No? So I've also already requested that to be done because that's a clarification coming. I've asked that they separate the new from the recent ones. So that will also be sent. The new from old. What is the status of the path to economic recovery? This question was posed by the same MP. The answer from the ministry: the path to economic recovery, which was presented to Parliament in 2020, was largely developed by the ministry itself. As such, the plan is still being used by the ministry, irrespective of which ministers head the ministry. It is also important to note that many of the key policy actions that have not yet come to fruition have been taken up in various country package measures. Among those measures is E6, which aims to stimulate the business and investment climate. The last question regarding the monthly rent of the new STB office. The monthly rent is $27,307.23 for approximately 530 square meters of office space and a multifunctional location. And due diligence was executed. An appraisal report was prepared in February 2022, which reflected comparable rental rates per square meter in the area. We see no need to contest the agreement, being that an appraisal report was provided. That are all the questions and answers provided by the Ministry of TIAT.
Thank you, Minister. I believe most of the ministry's answers have been received. I will now look at my left with members of Parliament for any clarification. I see MP Melissa Gums. MP Gums, you have the floor.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you to the Minister of Justice and the Minister of Finance for the answers so far. Minister of Justice, I think you missed a question from me regarding the COLA payment and the covenant mentioned by MinFinance. I asked how would that impact the justice workers and their LBAs. So will it have to be like an adjustment made or so once that is all finalized with regards to the cost of living adjustment? Thank you.
Thank you, MP Gums. The next person is MP Sarah Westcott Williams. MP, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and a good afternoon. Mr. Chairman, thanks to the ministers for their responses thus far. The Minister of Justice referred to residency and, in particular, conditional residency, and if that terminology can be explained, as the answer was given in the context of persons being able to get their driver's license. And the minister responded, and I paraphrase that, yes, once you're registered, and also for persons having conditional residency. And I would like that to be explained, please. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Sarah Westcott Williams. The next person is MP G.H. Martin. MP Martin, you have the floor.
MP Heilige Martin, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I'll have some clarifications for the Minister of Finance, Minister of Justice, and the Minister of TIAT. Just a quick, small clarification, because I'm a bit confused as to how the answer was provided by the Minister of Finance through you, Mr. Chairman. The minister is stating that the threshold for the GDP, he's following the threshold of the IMF and not the one that CFT is suggesting as 44.4%. Because CFT is saying that the threshold for the debt to ratio is supposed to be 44%. But the minister stated something along the lines that the IMF ratio is higher, 60%. So which one is the Minister of Finance really following? With regards to some questions I posed from the minister to the Minister of Justice through you, Mr. Chairman, it was regarding, I don't recall getting a response on the one for the seniors, but I'll try and paraphrase maybe my questions on that one. she stated that she's unable, through you, Mr. Chairman, to give me specifics on that. I'd like to know why, first and foremost. Why not provide me with the specifics? And also, I would like to know, maybe specifically I can ask, maybe paraphrase the question on that, maybe it will help draw the information better, that who, the eldest person that is on that list, that 100+ seniors that is awaiting payment, and what is the highest amount? I don't need to know the names. I just need to know the highest amount one of the seniors is looking to receive, and the eldest senior. I don't need to know that. I don't need to know that the eldest one is receiving this. I just need to know the highest in age and the highest in payment that supposed to be paid out to the senior. When it comes now to the I have another question. Another clarification with regards to the Minister of Justice stating that the whatever is the installments is also for those that are not unionized. But what if someone that is not unionized take you to court and say that they want their payment in full? Do they have a right to do that? Is that, has that even occurred? And again, those that have placements that are complete without objections in appeal, how many justice workers right now has completed, has no objections to their placement? How many of them right now, of the 700 and something plus, through you, Mr. Chairman? And lastly, for the Minister of TIAT, Mr. Chairman, I never asked for it to be in geheim, I forgot to say the word, confidential. And I'm also asking specifically, I would like to know, Mr. Chairman, those new, just recently, a couple, like a month or two ago, the person that recently received permits for the Dutch and taxi licenses, I'd like to know a list of the amount of people that received. I need to know the bus numbers and the taxi drivers' numbers that received. I would like that list, and I would like it public. This is public information. The tender was public, and I would like it today public. For public consumption, we represent the people. Stop hiding, Mr. Chairman. I'm asking the Minister of TIAT to stop hiding. Come with the answers. We want to know, because the people need to know. And they have a right to know. How many bus licenses and taxi licenses was provided brand new a few weeks ago, a few months ago, this year, to non-passport holders and passport holders? I want the list now. I don't need to know the whole 400. I need to know the new ones. I can pick it up right now, I just have to go and see what number 23, who's branded number 23. I can start writing them down myself, Mr. Chairman. So tell Mr. Number 23, we want the list, since he has the answers. Through you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, MP. The next person is MP Rolando Bryson. MP Bryson, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Firstly, for responding to the question regarding the central bank and the ability for whether there are any laws that prevent a local from being able to use online banking services. I was really looking for the minister if he can get an official answer or some sort of position on this from the central bank, or some specific legal information to clarify this once and for all, for the sake of the public, if not also for the members of parliament. I think it's important to really understand what is happening with that trend, and if the minister can at least get that clarity from the central bank. I did ask him if it's possible to get that. I would also like to get that answer upon continuing. The question that was answered, because I also had that question, but MP Gums had posed it before me, this sort of stalemate, as I call it, between the Ministry of Rummy and the notaries. Am I to understand that, is this going to happen in perpetuity? So if for whatever reason the government and the notaries cannot come to sort of resolution, is it that this can just continue? Is there a limited time frame to where this can be resolved? Or in theory, this can just be a blockage to the signage of these permits and deeds within that time frame. I think it should not be the purpose that if the government is able to issue decrees, if there are legal reasons for that, I would like to know what the legal basis is. But for me, the most important, is there an end in sight? And how far on can this go? I know the Minister of Rummy kind of said, well, we're going to look into it, but my fear is how soon does the Minister think he can get a resolution from this? And what is the legal basis for notaries deciding that they are not honoring decrees if that is what they're doing? Minister, through you, Mr. Chairman, I understand the Minister has explained a couple times, and maybe I am missing it, or other members of Parliament, this thing about how the net result of the GB's payment, concession, whatever term we want to use goes. Is it that if I look at the electricity expenses within the budget and I add that up, are we then to subtract that from what is listed as the income under concession, and that's the net amount? Or is the amount listed in the budget the net amount? Just so that we understand, because yes, it does make sense. The government uses electricity, but then the GB is owed something to the government. If that offsets, how does that normally work? I just wanted to really have a final understanding on this, because if I just strictly look at the budget, the amount is there, but it's more difficult for me to identify what then the government's electricity expenses is, because I see different budget posts for that across the budget under Electra and so on. And the Minister of Justice mentioned that, and also within the elucidation of the budget, that it covers 760 employees, and the first phase includes 200 LBAs that are expected to be ready. My question is it that the LBAs would be handled on a one-by-one basis, or is it like a batch of LBAs that all 200 would receive their LBAs at the same time? Or are we going to go in alphabetical order or rank, or just to have an idea, because 200 LBAs is quite a number. So if it is that it's going to be one by one or in batches, that might give a little bit of an understanding that if somebody receives an LBA, that they don't feel like, oh, but how come he gets and not me, in that type of situation. Maybe if the Minister can clarify the methodology under those first 200 LBAs that are expected to go out. And that'll be all, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Bryson. I don't see any other member of Parliament looking for clarification. So I look to my right. Minister, are you ready to dive in, or you need adjournment? Minister of Finance, you have the floor.
Yes, I'll be answering the questions posed by MP Helga Martin regarding the quarter 3 report. So the CFT states that they estimate the actual debt to GDP ratio to be 44%. The 44% is not a threshold of CFT. It's an estimate which they estimate it to be. As stated in the budget, we are at 30%, currently at 30%, and we use a threshold of the IMF, which is 60%. So IMF does their thresholds. But see, in the RFT, it doesn't exist. We don't have a threshold in our RFT. So we just use that as a basis. The IMF did an analysis and came to this threshold. As such, we are far below the threshold, and in addition, the RFT, as I mentioned before, does not have a debt to GDP ratio threshold, only an interest norm. And in regard to MP Bryson's question, regarding GB, the offset happens based on the actuals at the end of the year. Indeed, if the concession is higher than the actuals, then this amount should be paid by GB. And just through you, Mr. Chairman, for MP Helga Martin, I just want a clarification on her question, clarification regarding the request of the taxis and buses, I believe. She mentioned recent, but what is recent? Like, what is the timeline we're looking at?
Thank you, Minister. Were there any clarification from Minister of Justice? Minister of Justice, you have the floor.
Mr. Chairman, some of the questions that have been asked, I would like to reserve the opportunity to answer these tomorrow. God's willing. Thank you.
Thank you. And there was a point of clarification for MP Grisha Halliger Martin.
Mr. Chairman, I mentioned, even if it's a couple of weeks ago, a month ago, just recently provided. I think based on the notice that came out for everyone to come and sign in, I would like to know from the time of that notice to now, how many new bus and taxi licenses we're giving to non-passport holders and passport holders, Dutch passport holders and passport holders. Recently, this year, new ones this year. So the entire 2023, if you could cover the entire aspect of giving. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Grisha Halliger Martin. So, I'll have to adjourn the meeting until tomorrow? Until tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. Meeting adjourned.